It was a terrifying apprenticeship in the shadows. This morbid preoccupation intensified dramatically after the birth of his younger brother David in 1966. Jeffrey reportedly felt neglected, displaced in his parents' affections. The emotional turmoil in the household escalated with his mother's increasingly erratic behavior and frequent hospitalizations for psychiatric issues. The parents' relationship became strained, marked by bitter arguments that often erupted into shouting matches. Jeffrey, caught in the crossfire of this domestic discord, retreated further into himself, finding his only sense of agency and control in his macabre experiments. The family unit, once seemingly stable, began to fracture, mirroring the internal fragmentation occurring within young Jeffrey. Adolescence brought new layers of complexity and disturbance. Jeffrey's social awkwardness persisted, bordering on ostracization. He struggled to make friends, often the target of bullies, or simply ignored. His internal world, once dominated by animal dissection, began to shift towards darker, more abstract fantasies. Sexual confusion and nascent homosexual urges began to emerge, tangled with his already established fascination with anatomy and death. These developing desires, rather than finding healthy expression, became inextricably linked to his violent and controlling impulses. He began to fantasize not about connection but about possession, about reducing others to objects under his absolute dominion. Alcohol offered a temporary, destructive escape. By his early teens, Jeffrey was drinking heavily, often alone, using alcohol as a crutch to navigate his crippling social anxiety and the tumultuous landscape of his own mind. He would often arrive at school intoxicated, his grades plummeting, his behavior becoming more erratic, though still largely non-confrontational. His teachers and peers noted his increasing drunkenness, but the underlying psychological distress went unaddressed. This self-medication would become a lifelong pattern, intertwining with and fueling his darker compulsions. The alcohol numbed the pain, but it also dissolved his inhibitions, paving the way for the horrific acts to come. A crucial turning point arrived in 1978, the year he graduated from high school. His parents' marriage had completely disintegrated, culminating in a bitter divorce. Joyce moved to Wisconsin with David, leaving 8-year-old Jeffrey alone in the family home. This newfound freedom, devoid of any parental supervision or structure, proved catastrophic. The dam of his inhibitions, already weakened by alcohol and internal pathologies, burst. The isolated shed of his childhood fantasies was about to be replaced by something far more terrifying: the reality of human victims. His first victim was 8-year-old Stephen Hicks. In June of 1978, just weeks after his high school graduation and his parents' departure, Jeffrey picked up Hicks, who was hitchhiking. He brought him back to his empty house, offering him alcohol. What began as a desperate attempt at connection, fueled by loneliness and intoxication, quickly devolved into something monstrous. After Hicks passed out, Dahmer strangled him to death. The act was sudden, unplanned, but it unlocked something terrifying within him. The fantasy of absolute control, nurtured for years in the dissection of animals, was now applied to a human being. The immediate aftermath was a gruesome tableau of panic and perverse curiosity. Jeffrey dismembered Hicks's body in the basement, dissolving the flesh in acid and crushing the bones with a sledgehammer, scattering the remains in the woods behind his house. This horrific act, his first, was a terrifying experiment in depravity, an attempt to erase the evidence and, perhaps, to process the unfathomable reality of what he had done. It was a shocking escalation, a crossing of a Rubicon from which there was no return. The monster, long lurking in the shadows of his mind, had finally emerged into the light, leaving a trail of unspeakable horror in its wake.